Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're a manager, you already know your leadership challenges never really just plateau, right? The obstacles, those thorny issues your team is facing every day, they're constantly evolving. And naturally, you want your team to learn and adapt. So maybe you go out and buy them a big stack of leadership books. But let's be totally honest with ourselves here, asking an already overwhelmed direct report to read a 300-page book on top of their actual day job, yeah, it rarely works. So today, we are talking about a seriously powerful management hack, the Niche Chapter Playbook. We're going to explore exactly how you can use highly targeted, carefully selected book chapters to effectively mentor your team members and tackle very specific challenges head-on. Okay, let's dive into this.
There is this hilarious but honestly kind of painful quote from a retired executive captured in a recent McKinsey book. She said that the best thing about retirement was she no longer had to walk down the halls and when someone said good morning, have to think about what they really meant. It's funny, sure, but it actually highlights a massive, exhausting problem in management. Leadership communication can be incredibly taxing when your teams are hiding the truth or they're just afraid to speak openly. Navigating all that subtext, it takes a real toll. We desperately need a way to cut through that noise and develop teams that are fearless, honest, and truly effective.
So here is our roadmap for today. First up, the niche chapter strategy. Second, adopting fearless learning. Third, encouraging truth-telling. Fourth, leading from strengths. And finally, your step-by-step weekly meeting plan.
Let's start with Section 1, the Niche Chapter Strategy, or why you need to stop reading whole books.
The whole premise here is actually pretty revolutionary for team development. Simply put, stop asking your team to read entire books. The late, great Zig Ziglar really hit the nail on the head when he said, people often say that motivation doesn't last. Well, neither does bathing. That's why we recommend it daily. And you know what? The exact same rule applies to leadership. Learning leadership is definitely not some one-and-done seminar. As leadership author Dick Daniels urges, you literally have to recalibrate your calling every single day. That massive, heavy leadership book you read cover to cover last year, it probably doesn't address the specific keep-you-up-all-night crisis that just flooded your inbox yesterday. You need daily, highly relevant recalibration.
So think about the old way we used to do this, expecting your team to trudge through every leadership book cover to cover. It's just way too slow. It's a bottleneck. Instead, we need to embrace a totally new way, delegating highly specific, niche chapters tailored to whatever quarterly challenges you are facing right now. You absolutely do not need the whole book. You just need the one chapter that speaks directly to the hurdle your direct report is facing in this exact moment. You delegate the reading.
Section 2, adopt fearless learning, which really means practice making mistakes.
Since we are assigning niche chapters to solve specific quarterly hurdles, let's talk about one of the biggest roadblocks any team faces, the fear of failure. To tackle this, we turn to a brilliant book called The Journey of Leadership, written by senior partners at McKinsey & Company. Specifically, there's a bonus niche chapter in there titled Practice Making Mistakes. I want you to ask yourself directly right now, what team member do you have that desperately needs to learn from their mistakes? Think about your own direct reports. Who is currently paralyzed by the fear of failure? Who's playing it safe just because they're terrified of getting it wrong? That is the exact person you need to assign this specific niche chapter to.
Because the authors of The Journey of Leadership make a really blunt point here. They say, teams that avoid failure miss the point, because people learn as much, if not more, from mistakes as from successes. Just let that sink in for a second. Avoiding failure actually means you're missing the entire point of professional development. If your team isn't making mistakes, they simply aren't pushing the boundaries of what they can actually achieve. What's really fascinating is how the book illustrates this concept of fearless learning. They highlight Admiral William H. McRaven and the Plan B culture of the Navy SEALs. Think about the raid on Osama bin Laden's compound. The primary plan almost never survives contact with reality. The SEAL mindset dictates that sometimes you just have to fall out of love with your primary plan. You have to be completely fearless enough to watch Plan A fail, pivot instantly, and develop a brand new plan on the fly. And that level of adaptability, it only happens when a team isn't completely terrified of making a misstep.
Moving on to Section 3, encourage truth-telling. Because let's face it, everyone keeps things from the boss.
Here's the thing. Your team is never going to practice fearless learning if they are too scared to actually tell you the truth. There's another incredible niche chapter in that same McKinsey book called Everyone Keeps Things from the Boss. The authors share examples from McKinsey's Bauer Forum about CEOs who feel completely lost and blindsided because the second they became the boss, all the frank conversations just vanished. To show just how dangerous this lack of honesty is, the authors share this classic, mind-blowing example from 2006. Alan Mulally had just stepped in as the new CEO of Ford. He introduced this weekly meeting where executives had to submit really simple red, yellow, or green scorecards for their projects. Well, in that very first meeting, 16 executives presented their scorecards, and guess what? Every single project, across the entire board, was marked green. Everything was supposedly going perfectly.
Mulally was just sitting there, absolutely incredulous. He looks at these executives and basically asks, how on earth can all of our projects be going perfectly well when the company is losing $17 billion? Yes, with a B. The team was so conditioned to hide their failures from the boss that they literally sat there and claimed everything was green while the company bled $17 billion. This is exactly why you must assign chapters that actually foster dissent and encourage your team to actively seek out truth-telling.
Which brings us to Section 4. Lead from your strengths, the universal mission of heart and mind.
Okay, so when you're mentoring your team, a massive trap is trying to turn them into miniature versions of yourself. For this, we look to William P. Robinson's phenomenal book, Leading People from the Middle. Robinson uses this highly memorable, punchy three-point outline: can't, can, must. He writes, "You can't lead the way I lead. You wouldn't want to, and the people you lead wouldn't want you to either." And that is so true. As a manager, you have to help your direct reports discover that the very best leaders lead from their own unique strengths. You are not building clones here, you are building capable, independent individuals.
And a huge part of empowering those unique individuals is inclusion. Ann Chow dives into this in her book, Lead Bigger. She shares a really fascinating conversation she had with General Stanley McChrystal. Back when he was a major in the Army, McChrystal had 3 different bosses in just 3 years, and it created this crazy whipsaw effect. One boss was totally elitist, only the cool guys were allowed in the room, which basically left McChrystal out in the cold. But another boss was incredibly inclusive, taking this whole human approach to everyone's well-being. McChrystal said experiencing both sides of that coin completely changed his outlook. Inclusive leadership doesn't just feel better, it radically transforms how your entire team operates and grows.
All right, let's bring it all home. Section 5, weekly meeting, step by step. This is your action plan.
We've talked about all the theory in the specific books, but now let's pull it all together into a playbook you can actually use right away. Here is your incredibly simple 3-step cycle. Step 1. You pinpoint a specific challenge a direct report is facing, like that fear of failure we talked about, and you assign them just one highly relevant niche chapter, like the McKinsey one. Step 2. You have them read it and analyze it purely through the lens of their current obstacles. Step 3. You bring it to the weekly staff meeting to discuss. So the absolute crucial point here is that learning transforms into an ongoing, highly targeted conversation, rather than just feeling like some isolated homework assignment.
And to actually kick off these conversations, you can literally steal these exact questions from the Mastering the Management Buckets framework and drop them into your very next meeting. Just ask your team, 1. What's the most helpful leadership book you've ever read and why? 2. What are your principles for getting the most out of a book? And 3. Name a niche chapter you have recently recommended. Just asking these questions instantly normalizes a culture of continuous, fearless learning for your team.
Finally, as you roll out this niche chapter playbook, I really want to leave you with a bit of a gut check from Kevin G. Ford and Jim Singleton's book, Attentive Church Leadership. They quote author Tom Nelson, who reminds us that an inflated ego can reside in literally any human heart. So I'm asking you to just take a second and reflect on your own motives as a manager. Are you building a community, or are you simply stroking egos? Because when you delegate learning and you truly empower your team with these niche chapters, you completely shift the focus away from your own ego and put it squarely on their actual development. Implement this strategy, and I promise you, you're going to watch your team's community and capabilities completely soar. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.